No one expected her to step onto that stage. The air felt thick, as though everyone in the room had taken a collective breath and forgotten to exhale. Elena's fingers tightened around the cold neck of the violin. The bow rested loosely in her other hand, but the weight of the moment nearly made her drop it. The crowd's eyes burned into her, their stares like needles pricking her skin. She glanced over at the man in the gray suit who had introduced her. His smile was tight, full of mockery. He hadn't said her name once in his speech. It was as though she wasn't worth mentioning. Her heart beat against her chest. She hadn't planned for this, hadn't known the price she would have to pay for even stepping foot in this place. The stage lights felt hotter than they ever had before, and the polished wood of the violin felt slippery beneath her fingers. She didn't know how to begin. She didn't know if she wanted to. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. "Let's welcome the woman of the hour, ladies and gentlemen." The voice of the announcer, dripping with sarcasm, echoed across the hall. The audience clapped politely, but there was no warmth in their hands. It wasn't applause, it was ridicule disguised as politeness. She could hear the whispers, the snickers. They were waiting for her to fail. Her knees felt weak. The violin felt heavier than it ever had in her life. She lifted it to her shoulder, one practiced motion after another, but the sweat on her palms threatened to ruin everything. She knew they didn't believe in her. She knew they thought she was a joke, a pawn in some game they were playing. It didn't matter. She had to play. Elena had been forced into this position. There was no turning back. There had never been a choice. It was either this or face worse consequences. She turned her focus back to the violin. The crowd had grown quiet, still waiting for her to fail. The man in the gray suit was watching her, his arms crossed, a smug expression etched on his face. He had no idea what was about to happen. He didn't know who she was. With one slow breath, Elena positioned the bow over the strings. She drew it across, and the first note rang out, sharp, broken. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. It was the sound of a woman pushed too far, the sound of a heart already broken, trying to find a way back. A few people in the front row snickered. Another person in the back cleared their throat. Someone muttered, "Is this some kind of joke?" But Elena didn't flinch. She closed her eyes. She drew the bow again, this time with more force, more control. A second note followed, clear, though still trembling. The sound filled the space, but not in the way they expected. It didn't echo. It didn't ring hollow. It wrapped itself around the room, subtle but powerful. The audience fell silent. Elena's heart raced in her chest, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was something else, something they would never understand. She could feel the energy shift, almost as if the world itself held its breath. They were no longer laughing. They were listening. The next note came, followed by another, and another. The music, raw and unrefined, flowed from her as though it had always been there, buried deep inside her, waiting to escape. Each note carried her further from the crowd, further from their mockery. Her hands, though trembling, moved with a precision that betrayed her nerves. The bow danced across the strings, weaving a story of pain, of loss, of hope. She let the music speak for her. She didn't need words anymore. The man in the gray suit shifted uncomfortably, and Elena could see his smug grin falter. The people around him, once so eager to mock her, were now sitting on the edge of their seats. No one was speaking anymore. There was no laughter now. Instead, people's eyes widened as they recognized the shift. They were witnessing something they hadn't expected. The raw emotion in her music stirred something deep inside of them. They weren't just hearing the violin anymore, they were hearing Elena's soul. It was a soul that had been hidden for so long, a soul they didn't know existed. The tension in the room grew thicker. A woman in the second row blinked, and a single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She didn't even notice it. Elena continued to play, her eyes closed, her fingers dancing across the strings. She had forgotten about the audience entirely. They were no longer there in her mind. She was lost in the music, lost in the way the violin spoke to her, to everyone in that room. The teenage group in the front row had stopped whispering. They stopped passing notes. They stopped laughing. They stared at her, wide-eyed, unsure of what they were hearing. The tough facade they had put on was slipping away, replaced by something they didn't want to face, something they couldn't ignore. She wasn't just playing a violin anymore. She was telling them something. The sound of the violin began to climb, the pitch rising higher, more urgent. Elena's heart beat faster with every note. She played harder. Faster. The music built, creating a swell of emotions that seemed to crash over her, threatening to pull her under. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. And then, as the final note rang out, a note so pure, so resonant, that it felt as though time itself had frozen, Elena stopped. The room was silent. For a moment, everything hung in the air like a breath held too long. The audience, so quick to laugh and mock, were now sitting in stunned silence. Their eyes were wide. Their mouths slightly open. It was as though they were seeing something, someone, for the first time. A beat passed, and then, as if on cue, they erupted. The applause was deafening. People stood, clapping, shouting, some even crying. It wasn't the mockery they had anticipated. It wasn't the ridicule they had planned. It was genuine. It was real. Elena's heart raced, but she did not smile. She did not bow. She didn't even acknowledge them. She simply walked off the stage. No one saw her leave. The man in the gray suit stood frozen in place. His mouth was open in disbelief. He had never expected this. Elena, the woman they had all mocked, had just taken them on a journey they would never forget. Her gift was unlike anything they had ever heard, and it shattered their expectations. Behind her, the crowd continued to roar. But Elena had already disappeared into the shadows backstage, her steps quick and quiet. The man in the gray suit made no move to follow her. He stood still for a moment, unsure of what had just happened. His eyes searched the room, but Elena was gone. The applause continued, but it was fading. People were beginning to speak again, and their conversations were filled with confusion, awe, and disbelief. They had witnessed something extraordinary, but they didn't know why it had happened or how to explain it. But one thing was certain, they would never forget Elena. They would never forget the woman who had been forced to play the violin to mock her but had stunned them all. Elena had hidden her talent for so long. But now, the world had seen it. The world had heard it. And as she stepped into the dimly lit hallway, she knew the truth. There were people who knew who she really was, people who had been waiting for her to reveal her secret. She had just made a sound that only a select few could understand. And in the shadows, someone else was waiting for her too. Her journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. The applause that had filled the room began to fade as Elena disappeared into the shadowed backstage area. She leaned against the cool, concrete wall, her breathing still shallow, her fingers trembling slightly as they rested on the strings of the violin that had just carried her through something she hadn't expected. It wasn't just the music, it was the release, the escape. She had been trapped in the role they had forced her into, but for a few brief minutes, she had taken control. For a few minutes, the stage had been hers. But now, as she stood there, alone in the quiet, a new kind of fear gripped her. It wasn't the fear of failure anymore, it was something darker. Something that, despite all her efforts, she couldn't shake. Her eyes flickered to the door that led back into the crowd. She could hear their voices still. A low murmur of conversation. The disbelief, the wonder. They were trying to process what had just happened. She had been nothing but a joke to them just moments ago, and now, they didn't know what to make of her. But behind the applause, behind their praise, Elena could sense something else, a presence, one she hadn't felt before, but one that had been creeping closer since she first set foot in the hall. It wasn't the man in the gray suit. He was still out there, no doubt, trying to save face in front of the crowd. His expressions of shock had been genuine, but his surprise was only because he hadn't expected her to stand out in any way. He hadn't expected anything from her. Elena wasn't thinking about him anymore. The door creaked open behind her, and she spun around, gripping the violin tighter as if it could offer her some defense. But the figure that stepped through the doorway was not who she expected. It was the woman from the second row. The one who had been crying during her performance. Her eyes were wide, her makeup smudged from the tears she hadn't bothered to wipe away. She was out of breath, her cheeks flushed, as if she had been running to catch up with Elena. She stopped a few feet away, as though unsure whether to approach or stay back. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "You were amazing." Elena's eyes softened, but she didn't say anything at first. The woman's expression was one of awe, but there was also something more in her gaze, something like recognition. Elena felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if this woman wasn't just acknowledging her music, but seeing something else, something hidden beneath the surface. "I've never heard anything like that," the woman continued, stepping closer. You must be more than just a violinist." Elena's heart skipped a beat. She knew what was coming. She had seen it happen before. People who saw more than they should, more than they were meant to, tended to ask questions. Dangerous questions. I don't know what you mean," Elena stammered, but her voice was quieter than she had intended. She could feel her heart beating faster. It was just a performance. Nothing special. The woman didn't buy it. Her gaze sharpened, and she took another step forward. "Don't lie to me. I saw it in your eyes while you played. There was something that made you different. It wasn't just the music. It was like you were trying to tell us something." Elena's mind raced. She could feel the walls closing in on her. She couldn't let this woman get too close. She couldn't let anyone get too close. Not after what had happened before. "You're mistaken," Elena said quickly, her voice shaking now. I was just playing the violin. Nothing more." But the woman didn't back down. She took another step closer, almost as if she were trying to peer into Elena's soul. "I know you're hiding something," she said softly, but with a hint of urgency. "I can see it in your eyes. You're not just any performer. You're not just a woman who's been pushed to play the violin. You're carrying something inside of you. Something important." Elena stepped back, her mind whirling. She was trying to process what the woman was saying, but it didn't make sense. How could this woman know? She had just met her. She didn't know anything about Elena's past. Elena had made sure of that. She had hidden herself behind the performance, behind the music. It was all she had. But the woman wasn't finished. She wasn't backing down. Her eyes searched Elena's face, as though trying to pull the truth from her without saying another word. "I know what it's like to carry a secret," the woman said. "To have something buried deep inside of you that no one else can understand. Something that you're afraid to let out because once you do, you can't take it back. But you have to, don't you? You can't keep it hidden forever." Elena felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She couldn't let this woman see through her. She couldn't let her see what was lurking beneath the surface. She had spent years building walls, hiding her past, and now this stranger was standing here, almost as if she could see through everything. The woman took another step closer. "You're not alone, you know. If you ever want to talk, if you ever want to share whatever it is you've been carrying, I can help you. But only if you're ready. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The words hung in the air between them, and for a brief moment, Elena considered saying something, anything. But then the door at the far end of the hallway swung open again, and a man in a black suit stepped in. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Elena first. He didn't seem to notice the woman standing in front of her. "Elena," the man called out, his voice sharp and commanding. The woman took a step back, her gaze flickering between Elena and the man. Elena felt a surge of panic. This wasn't the time. It wasn't the place. She couldn't deal with any of this right now. "Excuse me," Elena muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned quickly, her heart pounding in her chest, and started toward the man in the black suit. The woman didn't follow her, but Elena could feel her eyes on her back as she walked away. Something told her that this wasn't the last time they would meet. Something told her that this woman knew more than she let on. "Elena," the man said again, his voice quieter now, but no less urgent. "We need to talk." Elena didn't look back. She kept walking, her hands clutching the violin as though it could offer her protection. She was almost to the door that led to the outside when the man grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "Not so fast," he said, his grip tightening slightly. "There are people who want to speak with you." Elena froze. She felt a chill run through her. She knew exactly who he meant. The people who had orchestrated this whole charade. The people who had forced her into this position in the first place. "I don't have time for this," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I don't want anything to do with them." The man's eyes darkened. "You don't have a choice. You don't get to walk away now." The chill in the air seemed to grow colder as Elena was led down the narrow hallway by the man in the black suit. She felt trapped, like an animal being herded into a cage she had no way of escaping from. Every step she took felt heavier than the last. Her mind raced with thoughts of the woman who had spoken to her earlier. The strange look in her eyes, the words that had cut through her carefully constructed walls, there was something unsettling about it all. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the woman knew something about her, something hidden deep within, and now she was too close to the truth. "Elena," the man's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. "Please. I need you to come with me. There are people waiting for you." She stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding in her chest. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to escape this nightmare, but she knew it was pointless. She had nowhere to go. She had nothing left to hide behind. Not anymore. "I told you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't want anything to do with them. I'm not your pawn. I'm not playing this game anymore." The man didn't flinch. He was calm, almost too calm. His face was unreadable, like stone. He didn't look at her with anger, but rather with something colder, indifference. "I'm not asking you to play any games," he replied, his tone measured. "I'm asking you to face the truth. There's more to your story than you realize, Elena. And I don't think you understand the consequences of walking away from it." Elena felt a sharp pang of fear in her chest. The truth. What truth? She had spent so long running from it, burying it deep inside her, trying to forget. She wasn't ready to face it. She wasn't strong enough to confront what she had done, what she had become. "I'm done with the lies," she said, turning to face him, her eyes locking with his. "If you want to talk, then tell me what you want from me. Stop playing these games." The man sighed, as if she had missed something important. As if she didn't understand the gravity of what was happening. His eyes softened for the briefest of moments, and then he stepped aside, gesturing to the door at the end of the hallway. "After you," he said. His voice was polite, but there was no warmth in it. No kindness. Just the coldness of a man who had long ago made peace with the darkness he was about to reveal. Elena hesitated. Every instinct in her told her to turn around and run, but she couldn't. She was already too deep into this web, and she knew there was no escaping it. The truth would find her sooner or later, no matter how far she tried to run. With a final breath, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the shadows stretching across the floor like dark fingers. There were 3 people sitting at a long table, their faces obscured in the gloom. A single lamp hung above them, casting a cold light that made their features appear sharper, more menacing. She couldn't make out their expressions, but she could feel the weight of their gazes on her. "Elena," the man in the black suit said, as he closed the door behind her. "Please, have a seat." She hesitated but walked toward the table, her eyes flicking from one person to the next. They were all dressed in business attire, their presence imposing, but it was the woman at the far end of the table who caught her attention. She was the same woman from the audience, the one who had spoken to her earlier. The one who had seen something more than just a performer. "Elena," the woman said, her voice soft but commanding, "I know you don't want to be here, but you need to understand something. We didn't bring you here to hurt you. We brought you here because you're part of something bigger than you realize." Elena's heart skipped a beat. She looked at the woman, then at the others around the table. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What is this? What do you want from me?" The man in the black suit took a seat beside her, his gaze never leaving her face. "We want you to understand the truth. The truth about who you really are." Her stomach lurched. "I already know who I am." The woman leaned forward, her eyes piercing through Elena. "Do you, though? Do you really know?" She paused for a moment, letting the question hang in the air like a weight. "You think you've been playing a role, but the truth is, you've been living a lie. You've been hiding from the world, and now it's time to face what you've been running from." Elena felt a surge of panic, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had to know what they were talking about. She had to understand. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. The man in the black suit spoke again. "We've been watching you for a long time, Elena. You think this all started with your violin performance, don't you? But it didn't. This has been going on for much longer than you realize." Elena's mind spun. "What do you mean? You've been watching me?" The woman at the table nodded slowly. "Yes. From the moment you began playing, we knew there was something more to you. Something special. Something that couldn't be ignored. But it wasn't until tonight that we realized just how much you've been hiding." Elena's heart raced. "I haven't been hiding anything," she said, almost pleading. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a violinist. That's all I've ever been." The man in the black suit shook his head. "No, Elena. You're much more than that. And you have a gift that has been locked away for years. It's time for you to unlock it. To embrace what you are." The woman spoke again, her voice more urgent this time. "You're not just a violinist. You're a key, Elena. You have the ability to open doors that no one else can. But you need to stop running. You need to stop hiding." Elena felt a chill run through her veins. She stood up suddenly, pushing her chair back with a loud scrape. "No. This is insane. I'm not. I don't have any special abilities. I'm not some kind of key. I'm just trying to live my life." But the woman wasn't done. She stood up as well, her voice sharp and insistent. "You've always known it, Elena. Deep down. The music you play, the way it moves people, it's more than just technique. It's more than just sound. You're tapping into something ancient, something powerful. Something that's been passed down through generations." Elena's breath caught in her throat. She had never told anyone about this. No one had ever understood what she felt when she played. It was like the music was alive inside of her, pulling at something deep within. But she had always dismissed it. She had always told herself it was just her imagination. "You're not the only one, Elena," the man said, his voice low and serious. "There are others like you. But you're different. You have something they don't. You have the ability to unlock the door to a power that has been hidden for centuries." Elena took a step back, her mind reeling. "No. I don't want any part of this. You've got it all wrong. I'm not some kind of." The man stood up, cutting her off. "You don't have a choice. This isn't about you anymore. This is about something much bigger. Something much more dangerous." The weight of his words hit her like a slap in the face. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. The woman's eyes softened. "We need you to help us unlock the truth, Elena. We need you to help us find the door." And with those words, Elena realized that the game had changed. She wasn't running anymore. She was part of something much bigger than herself, and there was no turning back. Elena sat in silence, the words of the mysterious people echoing in her mind. "You are the key. You have a gift. You are part of something bigger." But she couldn't make sense of it. Her mind felt like a jumbled puzzle, pieces scattered all over the place, none of them fitting together. Her eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of the faces staring back at her. The woman who had spoken so confidently, the man in the black suit who had guided her into this maze, and the two others who remained silent, their eyes piercing, as if they were waiting for her to say something. She couldn't take the pressure anymore. "I don't understand. I don't know what you want from me. I'm just a woman with a violin. I've never asked for any of this." Her voice shook with frustration, but there was something else behind her words: fear. The man in the black suit stood up slowly, as if he was in no rush. His hands rested on the back of his chair, his posture calm, but there was something unsettling in his stillness. "It's not about asking for it, Elena. It's about what's inside of you. It's about the power that has been dormant for so long." His eyes held hers, steady and unwavering. "You were born for this." The air felt thicker in the room, oppressive. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She felt the weight of everything they were saying pressing down on her. This was no longer just a game, this was real. And she was in deeper than she had ever imagined. The woman stood up then, her movements deliberate, almost too calm. She came to Elena's side and placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "We didn't want to tell you this, Elena. Not like this. But you need to understand, the music you play is not just a gift, it's a tool. It's a tool that has been passed down for generations." Elena turned her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean passed down? What is this really about?" The woman glanced at the others in the room, and then back at Elena. "You've always felt it, haven't you? The way the music moves you. The way it connects with your soul. There is a reason for that. You were born into this legacy. Your family, your bloodline, it's all connected." Elena's head spun. "My family? I don't understand." The man in the black suit cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Your ancestors, Elena, they were not just musicians. They were part of a secret society. A group of people who harnessed the power of sound to unlock hidden forces. Forces that have shaped history, that have changed the course of civilizations. But over time, they were hunted, persecuted, and their knowledge was buried. Hidden. Until now." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "A secret society," she repeated. The idea was ludicrous, impossible. But the way they spoke, the way they looked at her, made it all feel too real to deny. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why am I why am I the one who has to do this? The woman's gaze softened. Because, Elena, you are the last of your bloodline. The last one who can unlock what has been hidden. The music you play, it's not just notes and rhythms. It's a key to something more powerful than you can imagine. You are the one who can open the door. A shiver ran down Elena's spine. She felt cold, numb. Her hands trembled at her sides. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want this power, or whatever it is you're talking about. The man stepped forward. You don't have a choice. It's already in you. It's been in you since the day you were born. And now the world is at a tipping point. If you don't step into this, if you don't take control of what's inside of you, things will unravel. And no one, not you, not anyone, will be able to stop it. Elena's mind reeled. She wanted to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. She had nowhere left to hide. The truth was too much to bear, but at the same time, it was the only thing she could cling to. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice small, broken. The man's expression softened. There is a door, Elena. It's hidden in plain sight. And only you can open it. The music you play, the way it resonates with the world, it's the key to unlocking it. But you must be willing to let go of everything you thought you knew. You must be willing to embrace the unknown. The woman's eyes locked with Elena's, full of an intensity that was almost suffocating. Once you open the door, everything will change. The power that will be unleashed, no one can predict what will happen. But you, Elena, you have the strength to control it. You have the strength to change the world. The room grew quiet, as if holding its breath, waiting for Elena's response. Elena looked at each person in the room, their faces filled with a strange blend of hope and expectation. She could feel their eyes on her, pressing in, urging her to make a decision. A decision that could change everything. Her mind flashed back to her childhood, to the years she had spent playing the violin. It had always been a way for her to escape. A way to pour out her soul without words. But she had never imagined that her music could be anything more than just an outlet for her emotions. Never imagined that it could be the key to unlocking something so much bigger than herself. But here, in this room, surrounded by people who knew more about her than she did, she realized the truth. The music had always been more than she could understand. And now, it was her choice to make, accept it, or walk away. Elena closed her eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had spent so long running from her past, from her legacy, but now it seemed that running was no longer an option. The door had been opened, and it was calling her name. She stood up, her legs shaking, but her resolve hardening with each breath. Fine, she said, her voice steady. I'll do it. I'll open the door. A collective breath seemed to be released from the people around her. The woman smiled, a rare softness in her expression. Good. You've made the right choice. The man in the black suit nodded. You don't understand the full extent of what's to come, Elena. But we'll be with you every step of the way. You're not alone. Elena nodded, though part of her still felt lost in the chaos of everything that had just unfolded. But one thing was clear, she was no longer just a woman with a violin. She was the key. The key to something ancient, something powerful. And whether she was ready or not, it was time to unlock it. As the room fell into silence once more, Elena could hear the faintest sound of a violin in the distance. It was her violin. Her music. And it was calling her to a future she had never imagined. A future that was waiting to unfold, whether she was prepared or not.